Alrighty, now that we've made our preliminary master sketch, let's look at some of the questions. Again, we didn't really have many deductions that we could make with these particular rules, other than, F had to be one of these spots, H couldn't be there, and we had these couple blocks, but that was really about it. There wasn't much that we could really put up on the sketch. Okay, but remember, usually the very first question is almost always what's called an acceptability question. Which of the following could be the positions of the photographs? So all we have to do is just run through and make sure that we're not breaking any of our rules, right? And there's several ways that we can do that. I personally like to just take one rule at a time and tick off things as we go. Like, for example, one rule states that we have to have M in the first three spaces. So, for example, that means A is out because we have M in the fourth spot. This is okay, this is okay, this is okay, that's okay, all right? And then another rule is that we can't have H in the first slot, so that ticks off B, can't be right. And then what else do we have? We have another rule that states that I and L have to be right next to each other, so let's see, that's fine. That's a problem. D has them separated, that's it. And then what about this one? No, they're next to each other. Okay, and then the third thing was that we had to have HGK, right? HGK works for C, HGK works for, um, um, okay, so both of these are fine. And then the final thing that we had was that fence, or F, had to be either 1 or 7. So on C, that's okay, it's on 7. E, it's neither, oh, so E is out, so the answer is C. Again, those, I mean, kind of went slow on that one, but those usually aren't so terrible. All you really have to do is just double check what your rules are and then just tick stuff off as you go. Okay, so let's look at this next question here. If I is immediately before G, which of the following could be true? All right, so that means the wrong answers would be something that must be false, right? That would enable us to tick off stuff if we create a contradiction. So we have an if. We're creating a new rule. I has to be immediately before G. Well, let's see what happens here. It basically looks like we're going to be smushing together these two rules right here. If I is immediately before G, well, we know that G has to have K right after it, and we also know that L and I have to be next to each other, so that means I've got this, and H has to come in front of it somewhere. Okay, so I have this block of 4 and H in front of it. Now, let's play out these scenarios here. We know that H can't be on space number 1, right? So if H is going to be behind this block, the earliest H could be would be space number 2. So let me just sketch this out just for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is our sketch number 1. Let's suppose we put H here. Okay, and if we did that, then we'd have to put LIGK as a block, coming after it. 1, 2, 3, 4. LIGK would mean I could put that block, I could put it like here, LIGK, and that would allow me to have space to put F over here, and then M would have to go here in this scenario here. Okay, so that's one possible scenario that H we could play out. All right, but another possible scenario would be, okay, this block of LIGK, where else could it go? I could put it right here, LIGK, and that means, and we know we can't put H here, and that means I've got a couple of options of where I could put H. H could either go here or here. All right, but in this scenario, we would have to put F over here, right? Because we made that block, because F has to either be the first or the last photo. Okay, and that means over in here we have two things left. We could either put H or M, either one. All right, I don't know exactly which positions they would go. Okay, but just take a moment, pause the video for a moment, and just see these are the only two places where I could put that block of LIGK, right? Because if I've got to have H in front of it, H has to be prior to it, I'm limited to the soonest that I could put H would be here, and then the other option I could have would be either put H on space 2 or space 3. Those are the only ways that I could make this work. So there's just two scenarios where I could place this block. Okay, so now in that situation, which one could be true? What's possible? Is it possible for G to be 4? No, it's not. In both of the cases that we did, G was not 4. Is it possible for H to be 4? No. Could I be 3? Nope. In neither scenario is I 3. Is it possible for L to be 2? Nope. Da-dum-da-dum, it's got to be this one. But we could see that. It's possible. We could put Magnolia on space 3. We could put it right here, right? And then H right over here for scenario number 2. Okay? So that's it for that one. Let me pause for a second, clean this up, and we'll move on to questions 8 and 9. All right, we're back. I cleaned up a little bit. Now let's look at this one. It says, where each photograph, question 8, is hung is fully determined if which one of the following is true. Well, let's take a second. Where'd my pen go? There it is. Let's take a second and just translate what this means. Fully determined. Uh-oh, what's my brush? All right, right. There it is. Fully determined. What that means is that if you institute a new rule, right? If I say, oh, G's got to be 4, H has got to be second, or whatever, one of these things here, that means there's one and only one way to arrange all of the pieces. Okay? So let's just think about what is preventing us right now from, having only one specific place where all the pieces would go. And I would say, to me, the big issue is this rule right here, I and L, because it doesn't specify which one has to come first, right? It could be I first and then L, or L first, then I. This is a problem. So my gut hunch would be, I would want to look for a rule that would address this particular thing. And it doesn't seem obvious to me that either A or B or E would be acceptable, right? Because none of them have anything to do with where does I or L go. So my gut hunch is that I would try to tackle these ones first and see if that makes the thing fully determined. Okay. I know I'm kind of babbling a little bit here, but I think you'll get what I'm getting at. So here, let's sketch out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want to try. Let's see. If I say I is second, that doesn't completely narrow things down, right? Because that would mean that L could be either in space 1 or in space 3. There might be some other stuff that would force me to place L or I in a certain spot, but my gut hunch is that that's probably not the best thing to start with, as opposed to this one, where if L is first, immediately we know a couple of things. We know that I has to come here, right? Because they have to be next to each other. And then, I'm kind of liking this one. I have a feeling this is the correct one. Because think about what our other rules were. Remember we said F has to be either space 1 or 7? Well, if I put L there, that means F's got to go here. So far it's looking good. We also know that M has to be in the first 3, right? So that would mean, well, if I filled up space 1 and 2, M's got to go there. Yeah, this has got to be it. Yeah, because then the last thing we got is a block of HGK, and that's space of 3. We'd be forced to put H here, G here, and then K there. Yeah, that's it. And we're done. The correct answer for this one is D. And my advice for this one, I kind of got lucky on that one. My advice to you is to think about, when they say fully determined, look back on your rules and think about what's the factor that is preventing you from, being predictable about where everything has to go. That was a little bit weirdly expressed there, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. Like with the I and the L, that was an issue because they could go in either space. So we wanted something that would restrict or force us to place I or L in some definitive spot. And that would get us down to answers C and D. And D just looked a little bit more neat. So I went with that one first, and it turned out that is correct. Okay, so let's try this one. Actually, I'm going to do the same thing. Let me pause and then clean up, and we'll keep going. All right, let's keep at this. Let's look at question number 9. If Magnolia is second, which of the following cannot be true? All right, well, we can sketch this out. It's an if. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. M is second. All right. Well, if M is second, what does that force us to do? Well, not a whole lot is narrowed down. We do know that F could still be either here or there. We don't have any rules about H or anything, so there's nothing immediately jumping out to my head here. So I'm going to go right down the line and just see which can't work, right? What would force us to have a contradiction? Let's start with the first one. H is third. Could we do that? Well, if I put H here, we do have to put GK after it somewhere, and we also have to have F is one of those spots, and we also have to have IL together. That seems like it's okay. I could do this, right? Like, look at this. I could do G, K, I, L, and F right there. So that seems like that's fine. So I'm going to rule that out because we're looking for what can't be true. So that's out. What about if H is fourth? Let's do this one. So if that's the case, let me clear this up a little bit here. How do we clear this up? Oh, yeah, here we go. Okay, so let's try H being on space 4. This, I'm going to suspect that's going to create a problem. I think this is going to be the right answer. And here's why. This is my gut sense. Notice when you start putting stuff in the middle, you're cutting up your available blocks of space, right? Like I know that I need 2 sets of 2. I need to have a block of 2 for my GK, and I need to have a block of 2 for my IL, and that looks like we're not going to be able to do that. Yeah, this has got to be it, right? Because I know I'd have to put a block of GK in here somewhere. Let's say I put it here. Now, it doesn't matter where I put it. I'm not going to be able to have a space of 2 to then do my IELTS. So this is it. This is the answer. We're done. Okay, kind of did that fast, but hopefully you can see that is creating the issue. Always watch out for, when you're placing stuff, if you're breaking up your available space into little chunks like that, make sure that you've got enough room to fit in your whatever your blocks are. Okay, so that's that. B. Okay, last one. Which of the following, if substituted for the condition, would have the same effect? Okay, this is very important. A rare type of a question, but they're not terrible as long as you understand kind of what's going on. This is what's called a substitution rule, where I'm removing a certain rule and I'm putting something else in its place, but it's the two rules would have to have the same effect. So let's think about what we did. I'm removing the rule that H has to be somewhere prior. So two things, right? That H cannot be on space 1. And the other thing was that we said that H has to be prior to K somewhere, right? Okay. So if I'm removing these rules here, and then I replace that rule with one of these options down below, I end up with the same effect, that H can't be on space 1 and H has to be behind GK or behind K somewhere. Okay, so let's think about which of these would work. Let's look at this one. A, if F is 7th, H is 2nd. I don't like this because it doesn't give me anything about whether H has to be behind K, right? If F, and it also really doesn't do anything about space. Well, I guess it would rule out it being on space number 1, because if F can only be in one of 2 spaces, right? If F is on space 1, then H can be there, clearly. But if F is on 7, then H is on 2. So it does take care of this rule. It basically forces that H will never be on space 1, but it doesn't do anything for this, that H has to be behind K. Okay, so that's out. Okay, so what about B? B is kind of tempting here. G is somewhere after H, and either F or M is first. Okay, here's the problem. I like it because this first part, G is somewhere after H, that takes care of rule 2, right? Because if G is after H, well then K would have to be as well, because G and K are a block. But it's introducing a new thing here. It's saying it's forcing us to put fence or magnolia in first place. That's an additional rule. I don't like that. We shouldn't have to have another rule. No additional rules are being included here. So I'm going to eliminate C there. I mean B. Let's look at C. H must be somewhere between the 1st and 6th. I don't like that either, because while it does take care of rule 1 and can't be on space 1, it doesn't give us any positioning about where would H have to be behind K. So I'm gonna cancel that one off for sure. What about D? Unless H is 2nd, it must be somewhere between M and G. I kind of like this one because it's mentioning the G, but let me just hold that thought. I have a gut sense this is probably going to work, but let me just pin that for a second. E. K is somewhere after H, which must be somewhere after F. I don't like that. So it does the first thing. K has to be after H. That's good. But H isn't necessarily have to be after fence. That's introducing a new rule that we did not have. It's not one of these things. So that's out for sure. Okay. So it's got to be D, but let's just play with this for just a second. Okay, so unless H is 2nd, we have to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's just sketch this out. So scenario 1 would be H is 2nd. And scenario 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, where it's not on 2nd. Okay, so unless H is 2nd, it must be somewhere between M and... Well, let's try the first thing. Let's say H is 2nd. Okay, well, if it's 2nd, then, well, clearly we're fitting on rule 1. It's not going to be on space 1. And also, it would have to be behind K, because I wouldn't be able to put K here because I need to have G and K together. So yes, so this scenario here does fit both of our restrictions. H is not on space 1, and K has to come after it somewhere. So far, so good. But then supposing it's not on space 2, it says unless it's 2nd, it must be somewhere between M and G. Well, if it's in between M and G, then it can't be on space 1, right? That would not work, because if I was here, I would have to have M behind me. And that's not going to work, so that's a problem. Okay, good. That's still, it's keeping us with rule 1. And what about this? If it's in between M and G, that means it has to be behind G, which means it has to be behind K. Yep, that's it. It's correct. That one works. Basic idea. I feel